Hi, I'm your State Representative Annette Glenn. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Hometown Heroes. Each episode of Hometown Heroes will feature community leaders, local nonprofits, and others who make a significant positive impact in the 98th District. The place we call home has so much to be proud of. I hope you enjoy learning from our hometown heroes. As always, if you ever have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact my office. Enjoy the show.
Hello, I'm John Perry, and this is Representative Annette Glenn's Hometown Heroes with Representative Annette Glenn. Representative, nice to see you. Who is your guest for today?
John, I am excited to introduce you to Jan Lampman, who's the Executive Director of the Arc.
Welcome, Jan.
Welcome,
Hi,
Jan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. Tell us about the Arc.
So the Arc of Midland is an organization that serves people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. We support people throughout the lifespan from birth till death. And we really do whatever it takes to help people be able to be contributing citizens in our community.
How long have you been there?
Well, I've been with the Arc since February 1st of 1993. However, I've worked with people with disabilities since the early 80s.
What led you there?
To the Arc?
Yes.
Oh goodness. So when I was in college, I thought I was going to be a researcher. And we were doing some research around fetal alcohol syndrome, and I thought, I need to meet some actual people with disabilities if I'm going to research conditions that impact them, right? And so I went to work as a direct support professional in a group home, and I like to say that the folks there kidnapped me. I just decided that that's the work I needed to do, is helping people to have great lives and helping them to find their voice and to advocate. So that's how I came to the work.
So how long did you stay as a direct care professional?
So I worked as a direct support professional pretty much all through college. So I was a direct care worker for 4 years, and then I became a manager of the group homes for a period of time, and then came to the Arc to do the advocacy work.
So I imagine you work with a good number of organizations around Midland.
Yes.
Who?
Yes. So,
Yeah,
oh my goodness, we partner with lots and lots of organizations. The Arnold Center is an organization that helps people with employment, and I'm just really proud of the work that they have been doing around helping people to find employment in the community and to be gainfully employed, to make enough money to, live. So that's one of the organizations. There's an organization called the Reese Community Living Endeavor, and they do housing. And so lots of the folks that we advocate for live in houses that they have purchased for them. We work with our mental health system, so we work with community mental health. But we also work with United Way and with local businesses and really just anyone in the community who wants to be a part of the life of a person with a disability.
Jan, what are some of the most critical issues that you deal with on a daily basis?
Oh my goodness. So, a really big issue, you asked me about being a direct support professional, and a really big issue right now for the individuals that we represent is the shortage of people that are able to work in that field. We have a shortage of direct support professionals that has become pretty critical in the state of Michigan and really across the country. And so we have to figure out how to attract and support people who want to do this work so that we can continue to have individuals with disabilities thriving in the community. So that's, I think, the biggest thing right now.
Do you find most of the professionals, do they want this as a part-time where they do something else, or are they wanting to work with the same client all day long? What do you find?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's kind of a mix, right? There is a certain percentage of people who really want a part-time job, and that's great. There's lots of those available. But there are also people who want to make this their career, and they want to be able to work full-time as a direct support professional and maybe work with one or two people and focus on them. So we find kind of both.
Training. What kind of training do they need to have?
So, well, there's some basic things like, CPR and first aid, understanding the recipient rights system, understanding people's civil rights so that you don't, become their boss instead of their support, right? So some of those kinds of things, but also things like gentle teaching, creating a culture of gentleness, supporting people who have been through trauma. There's the people that we serve often have experienced various kinds of trauma. You know, the sexual assault statistics for people with disabilities is ridiculous. 4 out of 5 people will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime, right? People we serve are more often victims of violent crime, and so direct support professionals need to have training in how to help people get through those kinds of traumatic situations, right? But also simple things like, you know, young people, I'm not trying to bash young people because I'm the mother of young people, but they tend to not know how to cook, right? So simple things like how to cook a healthy meal or how to balance, you know, how to help somebody balance their diet. So the training varies depending on who you're serving, but definitely there's a need to get some good, solid training when you are in this field.
Can you give us some examples of somebody that's come into the ARC and said, we just need some life adjustments? How can you help us?
So, sure. So oftentimes families will come to us when their son or daughter is about to turn 18, and they're like, we don't know, okay,
what's next?
Our kid, what's going to happen now?
And the guardianship
with the
piece, stuff like
guardianship,
that.
right? Yeah. So should we become our child's guardian? What happens if we don't become our child's guardian? They told us that we won't be able to go to school meetings anymore, and so oftentimes we're helping families transition from, you know, like being the parent of a kid to being the parent of a young adult, and helping them set up the supports that they might need to be able to continue to support their child and for their child to continue to move into, you know, adult life. So sometimes that's helping them set up things like powers of attorney or other estate planning kinds of documents. Sometimes that's connecting them to an attorney that might be able to help them with a more complicated, you know, plan that they might need. Sometimes that's just helping them get connected to Social Security. You know, we might help them make application for Social Security or help them get connected to community mental health for some long-term supports.
And from the perspective of a family member, I would assume that you're talking about supports here that you're able to provide literally for years on end as that individual grows older and as the family, you know, maybe moves from working full-time into retirement and so on.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, one of the things that we know is true is that there is a very large number of aging parents whose sons and daughters still live at home with them, right? And they're beginning to need support themselves, let alone that son or daughter that's still living with them. And so we are about to embark on some really important work connecting to those aging caregivers to help them figure out how to do some planning for the future of their son or daughter. So
the Arc of Midland, do you have other ARCs around the state and region that you work with?
Oh yes, there are ARC chapters all across the country, actually, and we work really closely with the state chapter, the Arc of Michigan, which is focused right here in Lansing. But then there are other chapters. There's an ARC in Bay County that we work with. There's a ARC for sort of central lower Michigan, which is like Shiawassee County and Clinton, Eaton, Ingham counties. So there are chapters. We work with the Arc of the United States on national public policy issues. So, yeah.
So I have seen little snippets of all kinds of different programs you run. I saw most recently, I think, one about learning to ride a bike.
Yes. Bike camp is one of our most fun and enjoyable activities. We actually collaborate with the Midland County Educational Services Agency, so the schools, and the Rotary, the Noon Rotary helps fund it, and some other wonderful organizations help us to fund the bike camp. And yeah, every spring or summer we get a whole bunch of volunteers, about 70 volunteers together, and we teach kids who have not been able to learn to ride a bike using traditional methods, how to ride a bike.
So that many volunteers, very much a community effort then.
It's a huge community effort, yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you have to, part of the process is that you have a person who's running alongside of the bike that gives the child confidence. And so if it's an hour class, you cannot have the same person running alongside the bike for the whole hour. So we have to switch out so you need a little team for each kid.
If somebody wanted to volunteer for the ARC, how would they get a hold of you, and what are some things they could do?
Sure. So if you wanted to volunteer for the ARC, you could call us at the Arc of Midland, which our number is 989-631-4439. You could ask for Rachel Baker, or you could go onto our website, and there is a link that you can click if you want to volunteer.
Great. And what kind of things do you need help with?
Oh my goodness, well, bike camp in the spring and summer. But we've got the holidays coming up, and deliver food. We deliver extra special food to all of the people that we serve. We have a variety of gatherings for folks that we support for Thanksgiving who might not have family to be able to have a Thanksgiving dinner with. So we need help with those. As it gets closer to Christmas, we do a lot of helping wrap. We need people to wrap presents. We need people to help us deliver presents. We need people to come to our holiday parties and help celebrate with people. So those kinds of things. Sometimes we need help with like helping people get their leaves raked in the fall. So all kinds of, like if you have a skill, we have a job for you.
Sounds like if we had a skill or an hour, you could use us, whether it's raking leaves or wrapping gifts.
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned all age groups. So what kind of services and programs do you have for the younger people that you work with versus through the entire life? How does that transition?
So when families have a younger child, when say a K-12 or below, right, birth to 12th grade age child, we have advocates that can help parents navigate the special ed system because that can be complicated.
Going to the IEP and that kind of thing, sure.
And think about being a mom of a 3-year-old and you're suddenly thrust into school, public education, and you're thrust into these IEP meetings and people are talking a language you don't understand and you've just got this little kid and so a lot of times our advocates will just walk alongside families while they're navigating that system. And then we have things like the bike camp. We have a group for siblings that we, again, collaborate with the Midland County ESA to just provide some support to siblings of children with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Great. Fundraisers that you do throughout the year?
Yep, we have a great fun 5K race in the beginning of the summer, which you have
I've been there.
You've been at our race. And then also we are one of the beneficiaries of the Gus Macker tournament that happens in downtown Midland in August. And then at the end of the year, we have this year we're having a breakfast and it's going to be sort of a round table where people can share with us some of their thoughts about belonging in community and how to really create more of that for the people that we serve.
That has to be so important to that feeling of belonging.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we're blessed with in the Midland community is this culture that understands that everyone can contribute and that everyone does belong. I've traveled around the country sort of working with other organizations and other communities around helping support people in their own homes in the community. And I have to say that it really is pretty darn special in Midland.
I would have to agree. I know a number of people that were working with you for a number of years, and their parents would tell me that they had specifically moved their young adults or even 45-year-old adults down here because they felt like this was where they could grow and thrive and live more independently. And I know independent living's kind of one of your top priorities.
Yes, it absolutely is. Think about it. Don't you want to control who comes and goes from your front door? Right? And that's what we're talking about here, right? Is who decides who walks through my front door? Is it like an agency or is it me? And it's really kind of that simple.
And it's kind of transitioned through the years. At one point in time, and you've seen a lot of movement. So back when you started in the 90s, what kind of care were we looking at? And kind of walk me through the steps of change.
When I was a direct support professional in the 1980s, it was all group homes, right? It was people were coming out of the large institutions, coming back to their community from those institutions. And so, the best we knew what to do then was to, let's just make smaller places for people to live so that it feels like home. I remember once a case manager saying to me, "Doesn't this feel home-like?" I'm like, indeed. but wouldn't it be cool if it was really home, actually home.
It didn't feel like home, it was home.
Right. And so, that was the best we could do then, right? And so then in the 90s, we really began to learn about the fact that, it doesn't have to be that way. People really don't need to be sort of together to thrive, right? My friend Tim Bartlett lived with 2 Northwood University students when he first moved out of his parents' home. I lived with fellow university students when I first moved out of my home, right? I mean, that's right. That's a typical thing.
It's how it goes, yeah.
Yeah, and so we began to learn that we could open up possibilities for people with developmental disabilities, and we could have the same expectations that we have for other children that don't have disabilities. And that's really kind of what the evolution has looked like.
And you can help then with support for transportation or, like you say, learning to cook or that sort of thing.
Right, yeah. So we help people get connected to whatever it is they might need to be able to learn what they want to learn and do what they want to do in the community.
So I know at one point in time, you guys dealt with a lot of government rule changings, both at the federal and the state level. And I know at some point in time, they were trying to step back and say, maybe no employment. We should just entertain. How did that affect you?
So, again, in our community, people being able to have, what we would say as real jobs, right? People being able to have meaningful, gainful employment, or a small business if that's what they wanted.
We do have a small business.
Then we need to be able to support that. And so, although there was lots of fear and trepidation with some of the rule changes that were happening, I think that the leadership particularly at the Arnold Center, where a lot of that work was happening, Craig Vartarian and his amazing team and that board of directors really just said, let's just stay focused on what our goal is, which is to help people have jobs. People who come to us want to work, so let's just help them do that. And so I feel like we navigated that in our community really, really well.
I would agree, and it's been fun. I've been to the Arnold Center, I've been to the Arc, and any number of places, and I have to admit that some of the best I see is when there's not a good fit. Nobody throws up their hands and says, okay, let's quit and not do anything. Continue to investigate and look and continue to move until there is a really good fit.
Right. Well, I like to say this because I'm from Midland, and Herbert Henry Dow also happens to be from Midland. And how many things did he not make money at before he found the thing that he made money at? Right? And if you think about, and so why wouldn't we just keep trying if something doesn't work the first time? That's what scientists do, right? We're a city filled with scientists. And so, of course, we're just going to keep trying until we figure it out.
Does the Arc have a mission statement?
We do. Our mission is to promote the general welfare of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and foster their presence, participation, and inclusion in our community.
How many people do you work with on an annual basis?
Oh, goodness. So we have two sort of program areas, and one of our program areas is personal representation, where we support about 150 adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are living in their own homes, and we literally help them manage their money, pay their bills, access their doctors, those kinds of things in that program area. And then in our community building program area, we then facilitate circles and person-centered planning and do educational advocacy. And in that area of work, we probably, last year we served more than 2,000 people total.
Wow.
That might be just one contact, right? That might be just one meeting to give some advice, or it might be, our educational advocate going to 10 school meetings. But that's sort of what it looks like.
Wow. Funding comes from?
So funding comes from a variety of sources. We do get some United Way dollars. We are one of our program areas is funded by the United Way, and then we are able to charge program service fees for some of the things we do. People can pay, and they pay, and then we fundraise and receive donations. So we have our 3 fundraisers each year, and then we have people who just really value our mission and value the work that we do, and so they support us financially in that way.
That's a blessing. So when's the next fundraiser?
So the next fundraiser is coming up. It is in December. It's that first Tuesday in December, so I'm not sure what date that is, but first Tuesday in December, and it'll be a breakfast at the H Hotel, and it's going to be sort of fun because folks will be at their table with some other community members, and you'll get to enjoy a great breakfast and hear a little bit about what we're doing, but you're also going to get to engage with each other a little bit about that notion of belonging and how we can foster that in our community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What else would you like to tell us about the Arc?
Oh my goodness. This is what I would like to tell you about the Arc. I think that I personally am really grateful to the organization for the work that they do. I have lots of friends that I've met over the years who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, and I just think about what their lives might have been like had the Arc not been here, right? And we've been here since 1952, and
wow.
I know. So we've been in the community for a really long time, and I anticipate that we will continue to, be a support to families in our community into the future.
Now, clearly you're here at the state capitol with your state representative. How important is advocacy at the local and state level?
Well, it's really important. I still remember being on an airplane one time, and when the Congress, nationally, this is a national issue, but when Congress was looking at the ABLE Act, when we were trying to get the ABLE Act passed, and I remember Dave Camp calling me while I was on the airplane, and the flight attendant standing there telling me to hurry up my call. But I couldn't hurry up my call because I really wanted to make sure that he was he was going to continue to champion that for us, which of course he did. That was one of the things that he did right before he retired from Congress that was very important for us. But I feel like over the years we have had a very good relationship with all of our state representatives, both
I would agree.
Both Annette, and prior to Annette, Gary, and prior to that, Jim Stamas, and prior to that, Tony Stamas. I can go all the way back, and then Dave Camp. But I think that we have been able to nurture relationships where our representatives listen to the concerns of the people that we support and serve. And regardless of what side of the aisle, of course, Midland County, I can't remember a time, I wasn't alive for a time when it wasn't the Republican side of the aisle. But nonetheless, that, the issues that we care about, we're heard, we feel heard, and we feel championed. I'm going to tell you that the mental health code, the last mental health code changes that happened some years ago, the Arc of Michigan and the Arc of Midland and the other Arc chapters in the state really helped shape that, right? We were able to help shape that because we had representatives that really were willing to listen to us and valued the same things that we valued with regard to people being able to have freedom and be contributors. So. Yeah, it's very important.
Well, and from my side, as soon as I knew I was going to be serving with Health and Human Services, I reached out to Jan and I said, Jan, you are going to know things in this budget that I don't know. So we've 2 or 3 times we've sat down and gone through different budget items and how the impact is going to work. So
That's one of the big ticket items, of course, in the state budget.
It is.
Well, it is.
And worth it.
Right. I think that you can think about spending money. You can think of it as an investment, right? And the wise use of our public dollars, and what wiser use of public dollars than to promote people being able to be contributors to the common good, right? So when we are supporting people with disabilities to be able to live in their own homes and be in a neighborhood and be a good neighbor and be in a job and pay their taxes just like everyone else, right? That's a good investment of our public dollars. So.
Well, and I know there's a number of individuals that you work with that have been very key components of my life.
Right.
And it's been great to have them tell me exciting things that they have done with you and to share with me what a great part of the life they have because of the things you've done.
Well, thank you.
So thank you so much for all that you've done for us.
Well, thanks.
John, have you got more questions for Jan?
Representative Altold, you've I think as we talk to Jan, we're hearing a lot about just the whole issue of belonging, whether it's belonging in a community, belonging at a workplace, belonging in a home. Really, that's kind of the bottom line, isn't it?
Well, it is the bottom line. So I don't know if we have time, but I'll tell a quick story. There's a lady that I care a lot about. Her name is Mary, and she came out of the institution. She lived at the Mount Pleasant Center until she was in her late 20s, and then she came to Midland and first lived in one of those 6-bed group homes that I mentioned. I was actually a direct care worker in the home where she lived. And then she had the opportunity to move into her own home in the community, and she did. And it became really important to her that she only have paid people in her house when she needed them. When she lived everywhere else, she had 24-hour care with paid people, right? And for her, it suddenly became very important to have as few paid people in her life as possible because she really wanted to have friends. She wanted to just have friends. And so a long time ago, there were these volunteer ladies from I can't remember, it might have been a book club or it was some kind of group of women that did something periodically together, and they we're going to do a volunteer day of caring kind of thing. And they ended up going to Mary's house and they washed her windows. But while they were washing her windows, they got to know Mary. And so then what happened is some of those ladies, like, she's funny, she's, you know, she's got some wisdom, and they really liked being with her. And then they began to just want to hang out with her. And so she was able to make some friends and some connections. And here's what we started to see. Number one, Mary found that she needed even fewer supports than she had before, but also her blood pressure started going down. Some of her other health conditions started resolving. She started needing to see doctors less often. She would talk about being happier and more content, right? She recently had a bout of breast cancer and recovered so beautifully, but she was surrounded by people, right, who were in her life because they care about her and they love her, not because, I mean, there were also paid people who were wonderful and amazing, but she also had people who were just there because they love Mary. And it impacts her health, it impacts her happiness.
Yes.
She also knits hats and donates them for kids, which is something she never had the opportunity to do, you know, before she was connected to people who could, like, help her, you know, figure out what her gift was. And so that idea about belonging, it impacts everything.
It's beneficial
Absolutely.
for the community too. I'm thinking of a young man I know who has a developmental disability, 6'7", very tall. He'll be 21 in a few weeks. Works at a local bakery in a small community, and he is just beloved by everyone there. And the lessons he teaches others and the example he sets really have made the community all told a better place to live.
Absolutely.
Great value in that.
Absolutely.
There's some new studies showing that loneliness is actually more detrimental to your health than smoking.
Yes.
So this sense of belonging and this reconnection, I think society changed for a little while where we were all wanting to be independent, and we're learning again, we are a society. We need each other. We need that interaction.
Yes, absolutely. And so luckily, again, we live in a community that values that deeply. And so that benefits people with disabilities.
It's a win-win for all of us.
It is.
Okay, Jan, you have 1 minute. Anything else you'd like to add?
1 minute. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know who watches this, but if there are any people who watch this that would love to work with folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, again, we are in the middle of a staffing shortage, direct support professional shortage, and so it would be really great for people to, you know, think about that as a job or a career. And then from the public policy standpoint, we really just need to be making sure that our investment is at that level of the actual direct workers, right?
Yep.
So
been
those
working on it.
I know you have, and I appreciate that, and so do the people we serve.
Well, and my plug would be the chance to work with the people you work with is going to be a win-win for them. So to be able to make that investment and develop those relationships can be a win-win both for the people they work with and for those providing the care.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you for coming, and thanks for the work you do.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us.